Story 1. My name is Evan Calder, and I never believed houses could remember people. I grew up hearing stories like that, of course. Old family homes that felt angry, abandoned places that felt watched. But I always assumed those stories were exaggerations, people projecting fear onto silence. That belief didn't survive Hollow Creek Road. I moved there after my father died. Not because I wanted to, but because I had nowhere else to go. The house had been in my family for generations, passed down quietly, never sold, never remodeled properly. It sat at the very end of Hollow Creek Road, past the point where the pavement cracked and turned to gravel, past the last mailbox, past the last neighbor who still bothered to keep their porch light on. The locals called it the last house, but not casually. They said it the way you say something you don't expect to ever interact with, like it was a boundary. The house itself looked ordinary enough in daylight. 2 stories, gray siding peeling at the edges, porch boards warped by years of rain. The windows were narrow and tall, and they reflected the surrounding woods so clearly that sometimes it looked like the trees were growing inside the walls. The woods behind the house were dense, too dense. They pressed close, swallowing sound. Even birdsong felt muted there, as if the forest was holding its breath. The first night I stayed, it rained. A soft, steady rain that soaked into everything and made the world feel smaller. I remember standing in the empty living room, listening to water strike the roof and trickle down the gutters, and thinking how loud the house sounded when it was alone. Not creaks, not groans. Breathing. I told myself it was pipes and old wood adjusting to temperature changes. That explanation lasted exactly 1 night. I slept on a mattress on the floor of what had been my father's bedroom. The bed frame had broken years ago, and I hadn't bothered replacing it yet. Sometime after midnight, I woke up. Not suddenly, gradually. The way you do when something pulls you out of sleep without touching you. The rain was still falling. The room was dark, but I could see the outline of the window against the night sky. And I could hear footsteps downstairs. Slow, deliberate, 1 foot at a time. I held my breath and listened. The steps moved across the living room floor, then stopped, then started again. I told myself it was the house settling. But houses don't pause. Houses don't hesitate. The steps reached the bottom of the stairs. I waited for the sound of someone climbing them. It never came. Instead, something brushed against the wall beneath my room. Not scraping, not bumping, just pressing, like a hand resting flat against the wood. I lay there until morning. Didn't move, didn't sleep. When sunlight finally filtered through the window, the house felt normal again. Quiet. Empty. I went downstairs. The front door was locked. All the windows were closed. Nothing looked disturbed, except the dust. Across the living room floor, leading from the back door to the stairs, were faint footprints. Bare. Too long. And not mine. I tried to convince myself it was left over from years ago, something I'd never noticed. But the dust was fresh, and the prints were deep. That afternoon, I walked into town for supplies. At the general store, the woman behind the counter stopped mid-sentence when I told her where I was staying. "Hollow Creek Road?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "The last house." She didn't smile. "Your family's place?" I nodded. She hesitated, then said quietly, "You should keep the lights on at night." "Why?" She rang up my items without looking at me. "Because the house doesn't like the dark," she said. That night I left every light on, every room, every hallway. The house still breathed. And when the rain started again, something downstairs whispered my name.
When the house whispered my name, I didn't answer.
I stood frozen at the top of the stairs, every light in the house blazing, heart pounding so loudly I was sure it could hear it. "Evan," the voice said again. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It sounded like it was coming from inside the walls, from the spaces between the beams and the insulation. The voice didn't echo. It didn't travel. It simply existed. I backed into my bedroom and closed the door, locking it even though I knew locks didn't matter to things that didn't use doors. The rain outside intensified, hammering against the roof. Shadows from the trees writhed across the walls as branches swayed in the wind. The house felt fuller now, not occupied, aware. I didn't sleep. I sat on the mattress with my back against the wall, watching the door until morning came. When daylight finally arrived, the house went quiet again. Too quiet, like it was pretending. I spent the morning searching. Closets, cabinets, crawl spaces, the attic. In the attic, I found boxes I didn't remember from childhood. Old ones. Cardboard softened by moisture and time. Inside them were journals. Not my father's. Not my grandfather's. Names I didn't recognize, written in different handwriting styles, dated decades apart. Every journal told the same story. People moved into the house. They heard footsteps. They felt watched. They were called by name. And eventually they stopped writing. The last journal was my father's. The final entry was short. The house doesn't want to be empty anymore. My hands shook as I closed the book. That night I tried to leave. I packed my car, turned the key, and watched the dashboard lights flicker before the engine died. No power, no signal, no way out. The house knew. The lights inside flickered one by one, turning off as I stood in the driveway until only the upstairs window glowed. My father's old room. Something stood in it, watching. I ran back inside. The front door slammed shut behind me on its own. The house began to change. Hallways felt longer. Doorways appeared where none had been. Rooms shifted subtly, rearranging themselves while I wasn't looking. The whispers grew louder, not threatening, inviting. "You belong here," the house said in a dozen familiar voices. My mother's voice, my father's, mine. The basement door opened on its own. I don't know why I went down there. I only know that not going felt worse. The basement was larger than it should have been. The walls curved inward, forming a vast hollow space beneath the house. The air smelled like damp earth and old wood. In the center stood something that looked like a root system made of shadows and memories. The heart of the house. Faces pressed outward from it, half-formed, familiar and not. My father's face was there. He wasn't screaming. He looked peaceful. That terrified me more than anything else. "It remembers us," the house said. "It keeps us." I understood then. The house didn't kill. It collected. Lonely people, broken people, people with nowhere else to go. It fed on familiarity, on recognition, on being noticed. I stepped backward. "I won't stay," I said. The house paused. For the first time, it hesitated. "Because belief matters." I ran, not for the door, for the woods. The trees screamed as I passed through them, branches clawing at my clothes, but the ground stayed solid beneath my feet. I didn't look back. I didn't stop running until I reached the road. Morning found me collapsed in the mud, the house hidden behind fog. When I turned around, it looked normal again. Empty. Waiting. I never went back. The property remains unsold. The house still stands. Sometimes when it rains, people say they see lights on inside. And sometimes, if you stand very still at the edge of Hollow Creek Road, you can hear it breathing. Waiting for someone else who needs a place to belong. Story 2. I first noticed him on a Tuesday night. It was raining. The kind of rain that doesn't storm or threaten, just falls endlessly, turning streetlights into blurred halos and making the city feel half drowned. I was standing at my apartment window watching cars crawl past with their headlights on, when I saw someone standing across the street. He wasn't under an umbrella. He wasn't moving. He was just standing there on the sidewalk, head tilted slightly upward, letting the rain soak him completely. At first, I assumed he was waiting for someone. Then I noticed how still he was. People shift their weight. They check their phones. They fidget. This man did none of that. His arms hung at his sides, fingers relaxed, eyes fixed on my building, on my window, on me. I stepped back, heart thudding, telling myself I was imagining things. Paranoia comes easily when you live alone, when you work late, when you haven't slept enough. I waited a full minute before looking again. He was still there. Same spot, same posture, rain running down his face. I closed the blinds. That should have been the end of it. But something about the way he stood, like he didn't feel the rain at all, followed me as I tried to sleep. I dreamed of water filling rooms without rising, of voices speaking softly through walls, of eyes opening where reflections should be. When I woke up, my phone showed 3:11 a.m. I didn't remember waking, but I remembered the dream ending abruptly, like someone had stopped it. I rolled over and froze. There was a face at my window, not pressed against the glass, not distorted, just there, inches away, illuminated faintly by the streetlight below. The same man. His expression was calm, curious, like he was studying something fragile. I screamed and fell out of bed. When I looked again, the window was empty. The rain continued to fall. I didn't sleep after that. The next day, I tried to convince myself it was stress, sleep paralysis, a dream bleeding into reality. My apartment was on the second floor, no balcony, no fire escape. There was no way someone could stand outside my bedroom window. And yet, when I checked the glass, there were faint handprints, not smeared, placed, perfectly aligned with where a face would be. I called in sick to work. I stayed inside. I watched the rain. That night he was back, standing in the same place, looking up, waiting. This time I didn't close the blinds. I don't know why. Something in me wanted to understand. I watched him for almost an hour. He never moved, didn't blink, didn't shift. Rainwater pooled around his shoes, but he didn't step away. Finally, he raised his hand slowly, carefully, and waved, just once. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I didn't answer. A text followed. "You see me better in the rain." My hands started shaking. I typed back without thinking. "Who are you?" The reply came instantly. "Someone who has been waiting for you to notice." That was the first mistake. Acknowledging him, inviting explanation. From that night on, the rain never felt the same. It wasn't weather anymore, it was a signal.
After I replied to his message, the rain changed. Not in intensity, not in sound, in meaning. Every drop that struck the pavement below felt deliberate, like punctuation. The streetlight flickered slightly, casting shadows that bent in ways shadows shouldn't. My phone buzzed again. "You shouldn't talk to me inside." I stared at the screen. "Why?" I typed. The 3 dots appeared, paused, disappeared. Then, "Because the walls are thin when it rains." I backed away from the window. The apartment felt smaller suddenly. The air was thick, damp, heavy with a smell like wet concrete and old paper. I turned on every light. The glow helped, but not enough. My phone buzzed again. "Come outside." I didn't reply. I shut the blinds, locked the door, and sat on my couch holding my phone like a weapon. Minutes passed, then hours. At some point, exhaustion pulled me under. I woke to the sound of dripping. Not rain, dripping. Inside my apartment. I followed the sound into the kitchen. Water pooled on the floor beneath the ceiling light, though the ceiling was dry. The drops fell from nowhere,
splashing softly like something breathing slowly. My phone vibrated. You hear it now. The dripping stopped. The rain outside intensified. I checked the time. 3:11 a.m. Again. That night became the first of many patterns. He appeared only when it rained, always after midnight, always silent unless I acknowledged him. I stopped responding to messages, stopped looking out the window, but that didn't make him go away. He adapted. When I ignored him, the rain would grow heavier near my building and lighter everywhere else. When I wore headphones, the sound of rain would bleed through whatever I was listening to. One night I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my apartment. Slow, measured, stopping outside my door. My phone buzzed. You don't need to lock it. I screamed and called the police. They found nothing. No man, no wet footprints, no disturbance. The rain stopped shortly after they left. The officer suggested stress, lack of sleep. I believed him. Until the mirrors started changing. It began subtly. My reflection lagged behind me by a fraction of a second, then longer. Then sometimes it didn't follow at all. Once, after washing my face, I looked up and saw rain dripping down my reflected forehead. Not in reality, only in the mirror. My phone buzzed. You're getting closer. I tried leaving the city, packed a bag and drove west. Half an hour into the trip, rain began falling, only over my car. I pulled over beneath a gas station awning. The rain stopped everywhere else. My phone buzzed. Distance doesn't help when you're already seen. I threw the phone into the passenger seat and screamed. The gas station attendant stared at me through the glass, confused. I turned around and went home. That night, he was no longer across the street. He stood directly beneath my window, looking up. Rain soaked him completely. I finally opened the window. "Why me?" I shouted. He smiled. Not kindly, not cruelly, patiently. "Because you looked back," he said, his voice carrying easily through the rain. "Most people don't." "What do you want?" "To be noticed," he replied. "To be remembered." I felt something shift behind my eyes. Pressure. Warmth. "You don't exist," I said. He tilted his head. "Neither does rain," he said softly. "It's just water until you feel it." The next night the rain came inside. It dripped from the ceiling, ran down walls, collected in corners. My apartment flooded without filling. The floor stayed dry, but the sound of water was everywhere. My phone buzzed continuously. Voicemails, hundreds of them. All from my number, all recorded while I slept. My voice whispered things I didn't remember saying. "Don't look away. He's closer. I can see him now." I stopped answering, stopped speaking, stopped sleeping. The man began appearing in reflections. Store windows, car mirrors, bathroom glass. Always watching, always calm, always waiting. Until the night I woke up standing outside in the rain, barefoot, in my pajamas, at 3:11 a.m. He stood beside me, not touching, just close enough that I could feel the cold radiating from him. "You don't need the apartment anymore," he said. "You're ready." "For what?" He gestured around us. The rain fell straight down. The streetlights bent. The world blurred. "To watch." I understood then. He wasn't a man. He was a place, a presence that existed in attention, in observation, in moments where someone noticed too much and listened too closely. People like me, people alone, people awake at night. "I don't want this," I whispered. He nodded. Most don't. But you already opened the door. I closed my eyes, thought of sunlight, dry air, noise, life. I stepped backward, fell, not onto pavement, into nothing. I woke up in a hospital, dehydrated, exhausted. They said I'd collapsed in the rain and been found by a passerby. No man reported, no messages on my phone, no voicemails. The rain stopped. I moved apartments, changed my number. I avoid windows at night. But sometimes, when it rains just right, I feel the urge to look. And sometimes, reflected faintly in the glass, I see someone standing beside me, watching, waiting for me to notice again. Story 3. I worked the night shift at the Harrington Rail Control Center for almost 8 years, and in all that time, I learned one simple truth. Trains don't disappear. They break down. They derail. They stop. But they don't vanish. Until the 1147. The Harrington line was old, older than most of the city built around it. The tracks cut through forgotten industrial zones, abandoned factories, and long stretches of tunnel where cell service died and time felt suspended. My job wasn't glamorous. I monitored track sensors, signal lights, and train movements from a windowless control room buried beneath the station. Most nights were routine. Log arrivals, confirmed departures, report delays. The last scheduled train of the night was always the 11:47 p.m. inbound from the outer districts. 6 cars, automated system. No conductor after midnight, everything controlled remotely. On paper, it was the safest train on the line. The first time something went wrong, I almost missed it. The board showed the 11:47 entering Tunnel C at 11:52 p.m., right on time. Sensors lit up green as it passed each checkpoint. Then it stopped. Not abruptly, not alarmingly, it just paused, right in the middle of the tunnel. That wasn't unusual by itself. Signal checks sometimes caused brief halts. But after 30 seconds, the system should have auto-resumed. It didn't. I ran a diagnostic. No power failure, no obstruction. No emergency brake activation. The train was still there, occupied, moving 0 miles per hour. I opened the audio channel. 11:47, this is Control. Please confirm status. Silence. I tried again. Nothing but faint static. Then something else. Breathing. Not heavy, not panicked. Just slow, steady breathing, like someone sleeping with their mouth too close to a microphone. I cut the channel immediately. My skin prickled. Probably interference, my supervisor said the next morning when I logged it. Old tunnels pick up weird noise. I accepted that. Until it happened again. 2 nights later, the 11:47 stopped in the same place. Same tunnel. Same timestamp delay. Same silence. This time I didn't open the audio feed. I checked the cameras. The tunnel cam showed the front of the train perfectly still, headlights illuminating concrete walls slick with moisture. Nothing out of place. No movement, no people. After exactly 3 minutes, the train resumed on its own and arrived at the station 6 minutes late. No complaints were filed. No incidents reported. Passengers disembarked like nothing had happened. But I noticed something strange. The passenger count was off by 1. The system logged 112 people boarding. 113 disembarked. I double-checked. The numbers stayed the same. I flagged it. Maintenance shrugged it off. Counting glitch, they said. But glitches don't happen twice. On the 3rd night, I stayed late. I watched the clock. 11:47 p.m. The train entered Tunnel C. I held my breath. It slowed.
paused. Stopped. My console flickered. The lights dimmed slightly, like the building itself had exhaled. The audio channel opened by itself. Breathing filled the room. But this time it wasn't alone. I heard whispers layered beneath it. Multiple voices, too many to separate, all speaking softly, all saying the same thing. Don't let it see you watching. The screen glitched. The tunnel camera switched angles without command. Now it showed inside one of the passenger cars. The lights flickered. Empty seats stretched endlessly in both directions. Except for one. A figure sat near the far end, facing the camera. Perfectly still. The train began moving again. The feed cut out. My hands shook. I didn't report it. That was my mistake. Because the next night the train didn't come out of the tunnel at all.
When the 1147 didn't emerge from Tunnel C, the control room went unnaturally quiet. Not silent. Machines were still humming, monitors still glowing. But the feeling of sound vanished, like the air had thickened enough to swallow it. I checked the clock. 12:06 a.m. The train had been inside the tunnel for 14 minutes. That wasn't possible. Tunnel C was less than a mile long. Even at emergency crawl speed, it shouldn't take more than 3 minutes to clear. I ran diagnostics. Track power, normal. Signal lights, green. Emergency systems, inactive. According to every system, the train was still moving, but the sensors hadn't updated its position. It was stuck between checkpoints, as if the space itself had stopped reporting. I called my supervisor. No answer. I called Central Dispatch. No answer. I was alone. The audio channel opened again, not automatically this time. I didn't touch anything. The breathing returned. Slower now. Deeper. Like someone who had finally settled into a comfortable rhythm. Then a voice rose above it. Not whispering, not loud, just present. You see us now. I slammed the channel shut. My reflection stared back at me from the darkened monitor glass. For a split second, I didn't recognize it. My eyes looked too wide, too alert, like I'd been staring into darkness for too long. I checked the passenger cameras again. This time, the feed didn't show the tunnel. It showed the inside of the train. All 6 cars, every screen, all empty. Except for the last car. A single figure sat in the center seat, head tilted slightly forward, hands folded neatly in their lap. The figure's face was blurred, as if the camera refused to focus on it. The train lurched. The footage shook violently. Then the lights inside the cars dimmed. Emergency lighting kicked in. Red. The figure stood. My radio crackled. A recorded message played, one I recognized. It was mine, from an earlier shift. Control to 1147, confirm status. It looped, over and over. The figure began walking down the aisle, not toward the camera, toward the front of the train, toward the tunnel exit, toward the station, toward me. I realized then what the discrepancy meant. The extra passenger. The train wasn't carrying someone new. It was bringing something back. I tried to initiate a forced stop. The system rejected the command. Access denied. I had clearance for everything on that line, except this. A new alert flashed across the console. Unscheduled arrival detected. The tunnel camera came back online. The train was moving again. Slowly. Painfully slowly. The headlights illuminated the tunnel wall, but the concrete looked wrong now. Stretched, warped, like wet clay that had been molded too many times. Shapes pressed outward from inside the walls. Hands, faces, mouths open in silent speech. I stumbled backward from the console.
The control room lights flickered. The floor vibrated faintly. The building itself reacted as if the train were beneath us, not hundreds of feet away. The audio channel burst open. Dozens of voices spoke at once. Passengers, conductors, operators, all layered together. "We didn't mean to stay." It was quiet. "It watched us first." Then one voice rose above the others. Clear. Close. My voice. "You shouldn't have counted." The train emerged from the tunnel, but it didn't arrive at the platform. Instead, the cameras showed it slowing beneath the station, directly below the control room. A place no tracks were supposed to run. A place not on any map. The floor beneath my feet groaned. Something heavy moved underneath. The figure appeared on every monitor, standing now, facing upward, facing me. I felt pressure behind my eyes again, the same pressure I'd felt staring at the screens night after night. "You watched long enough," it said. The voice didn't come through speakers. It came from the room itself. "You saw the gaps." The lights went out. Emergency power failed. Only the monitors stayed on, all showing the same image. The inside of the control room, from above. I was sitting at my station, motionless, eyes open, watching. I understood then. The train didn't disappear people. It replaced watchers. It carried attention forward, passed it along. The figure stepped out of the train. The doors didn't open. The space simply folded. It was suddenly behind me. I didn't turn around. "I don't want this," I whispered. "That's not what matters," it replied calmly. "What matters is that you noticed." I felt myself being stretched thin, like awareness being peeled away from memory.
I felt every night I'd spent watching screens, every moment of stillness, every time I'd stared too long into empty spaces. The control room felt distant, unimportant. The monitors felt comforting, familiar. The figure leaned closer. "You already know how to watch." I closed my eyes, thought of daylight, crowds, noise, movement. I reached out blindly and smashed my fist against the emergency glass panel on the wall. It shattered. The impact jolted me hard enough to break focus. The monitors flickered, the figure blurred. The building shook violently. I fell. When I woke up, I was lying on the platform floor. Morning sunlight streamed through the station windows. Passengers moved around me, confused. Paramedics hovered nearby. They said I'd collapsed during my shift. The incident report listed system malfunction. The 11:47 arrived on time that night. No delays, no missing footage, no extra passengers. I quit a week later. They replaced me immediately. I don't take trains anymore. I don't stand near platforms at night. But sometimes when I'm awake too late and everything is quiet, I hear trains moving far underground. And I know someone else is watching now. Because the 11:47 never stops running. It just waits until someone notices it long enough to take their place.